Let's face it, liberals are offended by everything.
Right on.
And they have zero sense of humor.
Right on.
Huh?
Right on. It's the party game that pokes fun at political correctness and liberalism run amok.
But making fun of them is hilarious for the rest of us.
So play right on and mock the progressive left and their fake news media counterparts in a variety of categories, such as race hustle, the wussification of America, earth snobs, Islam abomination, Hollywood hypocrites, and campus coddling. Feminism follies and rainbow games, and don't forget, millennial entitlement and many others.
Right on, created by conservatives for conservatives.
Because mocking the left feels so right on.
Give the gift of all year long by going to RightOnGame.com.
That's RightOnGame.com. Use promo code MOJO50 for a 10% discount. That's RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off.
And while you're there, check out the new drinking game option.
Warning, microaggressions contained in this box. Millennials and snowflakes will be offended by its contents. Retreating to safe spaces are highly recommended.
RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off. RightOnGame.com.
You can't handle the truth.
The Denise Simon Experience. The Truth Matrix. Vetting, exposing, drilling down to the truth.
Rolling Thunder, this is Hitman. Seat over. Hitman, this is Rolling Thunder. Seat out.
The Denise Simon Experience. Exposing politics, lies, demagoguery, spin, fraud.
Grid to suppress. Mike Charlie, 4 tree 5, 9er 2-1. Grid to mark. Mike Charlie, 4-7 tree 9er, 8-9er, out.
Promoting individual situational awareness. Question, probe, notice, ask why.
Mark smoke on the deck. 2 rounds AGPT. Gas TOT 5-3.
And now, the Denise Simon Experience.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Denise Simon Experience. Very happy that you could join us. We're going to travel to somewhere between Washington, D.C. and Alaska. And we're going to talk about a hovercraft. And so I have been joined by Tony Francois of the Pacific Legal Foundation, because there was a fascinating case that dealt with a river and a hovercraft. And this case, I'm really kind of surprised the Supreme Court even took this case up, but Tony has been kind enough to join us to describe this case. And thank you, Tony, for being with us. I would have to say this case has got a lot of years attached to it, does it not?
Absolutely, Denise, and thanks for letting me join you today. This actually goes back to about 2007.
Yes.
And it involves an Alaskan moose hunter and his hovercraft and the National Park Service. There are not that many cases, even that make it to the Supreme Court, that arise out of such colorful facts, but this is one of them.
I just have been giggling on this case. I guess maybe the way it was sent to me, but I've been giggling on it for several days. So we have poor Mr. Sturgeon. He probably could have died waiting for this case to finally get settled, but he's an Alaskan, and he uses a hovercraft, and the hovercraft kind of broke, and so he parked it, and then here comes the Park Service, and then we get into a discussion on water and rivers and the riverbed. I mean, really?
Yeah, no. So just for the listeners to get a little bit fuller picture of this. So Mr. Sturgeon is like you said, a longtime Alaska resident. he's a hunter, and hunting is one of the big things in Alaska. And he hunts moose, which are very plentiful up there. And he goes to these very remote areas of Alaska. And, you know, it's important to know that, I mean, there's large swaths of Alaska that don't really have roads of much description in them or through them. And there are immense parts of that state that are only accessible by aircraft. And I have a friend that used to be a bush pilot up in Alaska. He just drive, you know, fly people around in you know, small single engine aircraft, or means like hovercraft. And so the interesting thing about a hovercraft is you can run it over land or water. And Mr. Sturgeon, John Sturgeon, would use a hovercraft. If you Google them, you just kind of get a picture of what they look like. They look kind of like some of those Star Wars, you know, speeder craft.
And they're not cheap.
Bulkier.
I mean, they could be $30,000, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are pretty sophisticated pieces of machinery. And so he would go upriver, in this case on the Nation River in Alaska, to hunting areas out in the remote parts of the state. And on part of this particular route, the Nation River passes through a preserve that's part of the national park system. And so the origin of the dispute here is that there are Park Service regulations that prohibit the use of hovercraft in national parks. And so because he's hovering, I've struggled to track down the correct verb for riding your hovercraft. Do you pilot it? Do you hover? Do you ride it? In any event, I've settled on hover because that just sounds funny. So he's hovering upriver through the Yukon-Charlie National Preserve on the Nation River, and he's got a mechanical problem with his hovercraft, and so he pulls over onto a sandbar in the river to fix it, to repair it. And he has an encounter there with three Park Service agents who inform him that it is illegal, and in fact can be prosecuted as a crime, to hover on one's hovercraft in a national park. And he's to depart the area and not come back, not hover back. And this is in 2007, and not long after that, he filed a lawsuit to establish under special management laws that apply to Alaska that this nationwide Park Service ban on hovercraft does not apply in Alaska. So that started in 2007. The case has been up to the Supreme Court twice now, and last Tuesday morning, the Supreme Court unanimously decided in his favor that the Park Service's hovercraft ban does not apply to park units in Alaska, at least when they're on the rivers, under a special statute that applies only in Alaska that balances federal and state management. So, in the words of Justice Kagan, who wrote the unanimous opinion for the Supreme Court, John Sturgeon can once again drive his hovercraft up that river to Moose Meadows, which is where he was.
I don't know. Did you expect a unanimous decision out of the Supreme Court on this hovercraft case?
Because of so there's some interesting legal issues in the case that, I would have not been surprised if it was not a unanimous decision, because it has to. I mean, when you dig into it, the legal issue in the case kind of boils down to what the federal government's control or ownership or interest in the river is as it runs through a national park. And this is one of the features of our federalist system. You know, the relationship between the federal government and state governments. And it's not always straightforward. I mean, you might think that simply because this river passes through the park, and it's certainly within the boundaries of the park where he had to stop and repair his hovercraft, that means it's in the park. But what the courts have looked at in this case, and they've differed, and the Supreme Court finally came out in Sturgeon's favor, is that for starters, because this river is navigable in the proper sense, as in like boats go up and down it, when Alaska was made a state, the bed and bank of all its navigable rivers were conveyed by the federal government to the state. And this has been a consistent practice when territories become states, going back to the very beginning of the republic, if you will, and is frequently expressly provided for in the applicable Statehood Act. So whatever state you live in, even if a river or a lake sits on or in or goes through federally owned land, the bed and bank of that river or lake is owned by the state. Okay. So then from there, Mr. Sturgeon argued that the water itself, the river, is not federal property either, because in a certain sense, nobody owns the river itself. There are water rights to the use of portions of the river, but the federal government doesn't own the surface of the water that he's navigating on. And, the Ninth Circuit had said a couple of times, well, yeah, we think the federal government does own that. But what the Supreme Court said, and, like you asked, I think it's encouraging to me that the Supreme Court unanimously agreed, no, the federal government doesn't own the surface of that river in the sense that it can regulate navigation on it or prohibit a particular means of navigation. It can ensure that people can navigate on it. That's within federal authority. But it can't, nitpick how you move up and down the river, at least under the authority of the Park Service. So it's a good outcome. It's great for Mr. Sturgeon. I think good for him to have an end of this long-running case, and certainly to have it resolved in his favor. And it's just one of those cases where you would be skeptical if somebody invented the facts in order to write a TV show or a novel, but it's really what happened.
In the case of Mr. Sturgeon, though, he wasn't tried or arrested for a violation of law. Is that right? I mean, he was just necessarily perhaps given a warning, and he was really doing this case as kind of a clarification of law?
Yeah, that's exactly right. They told him, the Park Service agents told him that he could be arrested, and they warned him, you're not allowed to do that here. And he filed the lawsuit in order to clarify whether or not they were right. And so, correct. He's not been prosecuted, thankfully. And what this does show, though, is that henceforth, nobody can be prosecuted for this in Alaska. One of the interesting features of this case, though, is that its basic result is only necessarily true in Alaska because of a federal statute that clarifies that if the government doesn't own the land or a particular water body, the Park Service regulations don't apply there. And the reason that this special allocation of authority is in statute for Alaska is that in the rest of the country, the Park Service claims the authority to impose its regulations on all kinds of private property that is within the boundaries of national parks, and even outside the boundaries of national parks. If the Park Service, claims that, your use of your ranch or your home or something like that, even if it's outside the boundaries of the park, would affect the enjoyment of the use of the park. So there is an open question still whether the Park Service and similar agencies like the Forest Service, whether they actually have this authority constitutionally and even under the statutes that they operate under to regulate private property simply because they own the adjacent federal property. The national forests and national parks are full of what are called in-holdings. These are private property that was privately owned before the park or the national forest was established. Roads that go through the forests or parks, mining claims, homesteads, sometimes fairly large communities of privately owned homes and shops and things like that sit within the boundary of national parks or national forests simply because they were there first. And, there are certainly a lot of cases where the federal agencies employ a pretty heavy hand in telling these people what they can do and what they can't. There are a lot of disputes and conflict over access and things like that. So we've got this answer for Alaska, but there's more to do in clarifying and I think properly limiting the reach of federal regulation on private property in the lower 48.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because this is, Park Service is what, under the Department of Interior?
Correct.
And so the Department of Interior has got to collaborate maybe with EPA and is this really, I don't know. I guess it's law in one place and maybe a regulation in other places. I mean, there's got to be a lot of cleanup, I think, in some language here, or an amendment to regulations and or law. So I would say the Sturgeon hovercraft case has got a lot of reach for Congress and or state legislatures. They got to get their game on, correct?
Well, one thing is quite clear. The special arrangement, the special arrangement that Alaska has in the management of federal property in Alaska is, in my view at least, certainly appropriate for the lower 48.
Mm-hmm.
Alaska was able to ensure that its interests and the interests of its residents were protected when it became a state, not as effectively as they hoped to, but nonetheless have been able to. The state of Alaska, for example, collaborated with and litigated this case alongside Mr. Sturgeon in support of his position.
Oh, good. Okay.
And it was actually really good to see, a state sticking up for one of its residents against federal overreach.
Mm-hmm.
But you take, for example, large national parks in the lower 48, like, the parks in Utah and in Arizona, the Grand Canyon, Bryce Canyon, Arches National Park. There's no reason peculiar to Alaska, okay, that the Park Service shouldn't be restricted to regulating its property and leaving people who own private property alone.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And if some use of private property within the boundaries of a park is just flat out incompatible with the park and harms the experience of people who are in the park or harms the resources of the park, and I would challenge somebody to actually provide a clear example of that, not just somebody doing something that others find offensive or obnoxious, but actually something that harms the resources of the park. The federal government's got the power of eminent domain, which is not something that, we're all, jumping up and down cheering about.
Right.
But if they're going to tell a private property owner there isn't room in this town for the both of us, they should be compensating that person for taking their property. Not
Correct.
simply telling them, look, you have the misfortune of having the federal government for a neighbor, and we're going to tell you how it's going to go. And so I think it is appropriate for Congress to look closely at how federal facilities, particularly in the western United States, but not exclusively. I mean, this happens all over the country. There's certainly national parks all over the country. How the Park Service, the Forest Service, and the few other agencies that manage federal property, how they operate as neighbors to private property owners and to states, and to clearly restrict them to management of their property in the public interest, and limit, as they've done in Alaska, these agencies' ability to micromanage your use of your property simply because it's sort of within their zone of interest.
Well, I have a feeling that there was some probably giggles going on with these Supreme Court justices as they were hearing this case, if not somebody there's lacking a sense of humor. But hat tip to Pacific Legal for being a friend of this case. And, a big hat tip to Mr. Sturgeon. I think his case has actually done more of a public service to all 50 states, not just Alaska. And it'll be interesting to see any of these congressional committees that kind of clean up some of this language. So there is some real clarifications. And I suspect that there may be some other similar cases that are going on that may not even necessarily get to court because of this Supreme Court decision. By the way, how old is Mr. Sturgeon?
I don't know the answer to that. He's been, hunting for 4 decades or more.
Yeah,
so
he can't be a young guy. No, he can't be a young guy. Mr. Tony Francois and Pacific Legal Foundation, thanks for sharing this case. Ladies and gentlemen, trot on over to Pacific Legal Foundation's website, and you can see the colossally great work that they do over there. And hat tip to you, Tony, for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience. Ladies and gentlemen, there's more coming your way, so stay with us.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio, and I carry my Sig Sauer 9mm every day. It's like a MasterCard. I never leave home without it.
And I'm glad you do, given that you work in Atlanta every day, talking about a rough place to work.
Well, Donna, I would say that most of our beloved Cowboy Logic Radio listeners not only own, but carry their weapons too. It's just the thing to do nowadays.
So do I, Don. And we need to share with our listeners a fantastic weapons company, Tar River Arms. Oh, and I should mention, they were founded by United States Marine, enough said, right? Badass-o-matic.
TarRiverArms.com. That's TAR Riverarms.com.
Tar River Arms, America's first virtual gun store, makes it easier and more comfortable than ever to purchase your firearm online. And through 3D interactive experiences, you can even view and inspect that gun you're purchasing.
They even have weekly specials that eliminate shipping and broker fees, Donna. Great guns, great prices, and great service. And remember, Tar River Arms is veteran-owned and operated.
Don, would you expect anything less from a Marine?
No, ma'am.
At TarRiverArms.com, you can search by caliber, manufacturer, and firearm types. Revolvers, semi-automatic pistols, including your SIG, Don, short barrel rifles, long rifles, shotguns, and NFA silencers. They even have very hard-to-find products such as the H&K MP5. Totally badass.
Tar River Arms have some of the coolest high-end tactical weapons made, all at great prices.
TarRiverArms.com, U.S. Marine owned and operated.
Hoorah!
Hey gang, did you know that the big cellular companies fund liberal causes and candidates, not Patriot Mobile?
You're correct, Donna. Did you know that the big mobile companies have spent over $100 million to elect liberal candidates? They also fund liberal causes, agendas, and organizations such as Planned Parenthood, not Patriot Mobile.
Here's how it works. You, our beloved Cowboy Logic Radio listeners, pay your cell phone bill every month. Then Big Mobile takes your money and gives millions to liberal candidates who authorize subsidies to provide free cell service, Obama phones, to do-nothings who vote for more liberals so they can keep getting more free stuff that you pay for. Not Patriot Mobile.
So here's how you fight back. Switch to Patriot Mobile with unlimited plans starting as low as $20 a month and stop funding the big cellular companies.
Feel good about funding the right agendas. Every dollar you spend makes a statement. What message are you sending?
And it's easy to switch. You can even keep your same number, and they've got great nationwide coverage that includes Double D Ranch.
Visit them online at patriotmobile.com or call them at 1-800-A-PATRIOT.
And for any of the guilt-ridden liberals, that's 1-800-272-8746.
Created by conservatives for conservatives. Their name says it all. Patriot Mobile. Do it now. patriotmobile.com or 1-800-A-PATRIOT.
Ladies and gentlemen, what message are you sending?
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging with us here on the Denise Simon Experience. We're going to talk about somebody who might just be in the headlines here in the next couple of days, and somebody that my buddy here, Sam Faddis, my former CIA operative and writer and government contractor and frequent guest on the Denise Simon Experience, has pinpointed, and I'm very happy, Mr. Sam Faddis, that you pinpointed John Brennan at the core of all of this nonsense with the Mueller investigation. I think he is part and parcel of a war room that was going on, and you decided to kind of shine a light on Mr. John Brennan. But welcome, Sam Faddis.
Thank you very much for having me, Madame.
I think it's important for the listeners to, one, understand that before John Brennan took over CIA, he was also on Obama's National Security Council. And John Brennan has a little bit of a history of doing some sneaky political things, not sneaky operative things, but political things. And the one that I'm reminded of is when he decided that he was going to do some, I don't know if it was wiretapping or surveillance on Senate staffers over the CIA torture memos. Hello, Dianne Feinstein. So the fact that he helped concoct or move along or was the grand marshal of the Trump dossier wouldn't be at all a far stretch, would it?
No, I think what people need to understand is that what we have now are individuals, and certainly Mr. Brennan is one of them, who have long since become completely politicized. In other words, they may at any one point in time be serving in some government capacity in a job where theoretically they're supposed to be impartial, serving the best interests of the American people. In point of fact, they ceased to be impartial if they ever were a long time ago. I mean, Brennan hitched his star to Bill Clinton's wagon many decades ago. He has been part and parcel of Clinton Inc. for a very long time. Nothing he does is impartial. Nothing he does is driven by the best interests of the country.
It is all driven by political considerations, and he's part of this Democratic machine. So really hard in that context to say that there's almost anything that's completely out of bounds or completely inconceivable that he would have done in their interest. Whatever they wanted him to do, he would do.
And he used his resume as a point of authority and a point of all-knowing, to the point where after he left government, that he still inferred that he had those deep contacts. And what is particularly fascinating is the deputy director, Mike Morrell, he didn't play that card, did he?
No, well, he's now parked with a think tank, which is basically a Hillary Clinton creation. But your point about Brennan is well taken. I wrote an article called "An Open Letter to Mr. Brennan," a year ago now. I can't remember how long ago it was, addressing this very point, which is just knock this off, buddy. If you want to be a partisan hack and just speak for Hillary Clinton, then be a partisan hack and speak for Hillary Clinton. I can't stop you. But stop with the I'm just a dispassionate defender of the Republic thing, where you sit off to the side like the old man filled with wisdom, just expressing outrage at what the Republicans are doing. I mean, the only question, when John Brennan speaks, the only question you have to ask yourself is, did you see Hillary Clinton's lips move? Because that's what this is. It is a ventriloquist show. He is a mouthpiece. He might as well be her attorney. One of these things where the attorney stands in the courthouse steps and says, my client's innocent. Well, what'd you expect him to say? He's bought and paid for by the guy on trial. So I think we could have predicted what his statement was going to be. That's Brennan. He of course he's going to attack Donald Trump and attack the Republicans and attack everybody. And it doesn't mean anything other than that the people he works for want him to do that.
There were memos, there were phone calls. I'm sure they're running around using either, WhatsApp or, some other encrypted text messaging, phone call, operation, still to this day. I mean, it's becoming pretty apparent that there was, I don't want to use the word collusion because if I hear it one more time, I'm going to jump out the window. I would say collaboration. And for Brennan, it's not a new gig. And for the Clintons, it's not a new gig. And I guess the big question here is not only what did John Brennan know and when did he know it, but same thing goes for Barack Obama. What did Barack Obama know and when did he know it? Because Russian interference and infection is real. It's still real to this day. And yet all of this happened while Obama was president. And so the question then becomes, where was Susan Rice? Where was John Brennan? Where was Mike Morrell? Where were all these people saying, hey, dude, you got to do something more than shut down Russian DACAs in 3 locations and throw out a bunch of Russian, their diplomat corps, right?
Right. I mean, there's a million questions to be asked, to be answered. As I wrote in a recent article, exactly as you said, we need to know from Mr. Brennan what he knew and when he knew it, but we need to know from all the rest of these folks. Let's put this in context. First of all, Brennan's been running around telling us that he knows effectively to a moral certainty for 2 years plus, that the President of the United States is a traitor. Those are his words, and he's said them over and over and over. As the august, all-knowing, wise man who was the director of Central Intelligence, I'm privy to information, and I know that the President of the United States is a traitor and a Russian agent. Now, all of a sudden, that the Mueller investigation has closed up shop without reaching any such conclusion or finding any evidence of it. Now he kind of wants to say, well, I guess I had bad info. Like, wait a second, Sparky.
That's scary.
You were not a guy standing on the street corner trying to watch Fox News and figure out what's going on. You're the head of the Central Intelligence Agency. You're telling us that there was an allegation that was taken seriously that the President of the United States, the new president, is a Russian agent, and the Russians have effectively just staged a coup and taken control of the United States of America. You didn't say to the FBI, okay, let me know how that comes out. Are you kidding me? You're the head of the CIA. Is there anything more important on the planet if you're telling me you took this seriously? No, nothing else. Who cares where Baghdadi is or the status of ISIS if the Russians just staged a coup and took over the United States government? So that means the FBI is not just working this problem. That means the CIA must have been working the problem too, right? One would assume NSA. The entire intelligence community, if this is real, must have been energized to pursue this issue, which would presume also means, as you said, that Barack Obama and a whole host of other characters must have been aware of this. So where is all of that information? What exactly? This is before, by the way, we get to a whole other dimension that you're well aware of, which is this is giving them the benefit of the doubt on the assumption that they stumbled on information that came to them from elsewhere. There are obviously indications, suggestions here that this was never anything nearly that clean, that they set this whole thing up from the outset, that they manufactured the evidence, that they created this whole thing, they being Brennan and people in the FBI and other folks, that this, in fact, was a conspiracy from the beginning. Now, I can't prove that, but we should certainly find out whether that's true or not. In any event, he doesn't get to just walk away now and scratch his head and say, oh, sorry, I guess I was wrong. I guess I got bad info. No big deal.
Sam, CIA, by culture, by training, by policy, any piece of data that they get, whoever gets it, wherever it comes from, and whatever that time frame is, you have to check it out and recheck it and have somebody else look at it and then go back and look at it again. And then, you have to be in the world of absolutes as close as you can possibly get. So for John Brennan to admit that possibly he got bad information is terrifying. Where does that leave us, I would say, given his government role for the last 15 or 20 years?
Well, if it's true, it is terrifying, and you should burn the organization to the ground, start over. But I would submit to you that it's completely disingenuous, and it's just dumb. It's like, come on, man. You didn't say you had some doubts. You said over and over and over again that you're aware that the president is a traitor. You used exactly that word repeatedly over a period of years. Now you just kind of want to shrug your shoulders and say, never mind. No, you don't get to do that. You have to answer some questions. By the way, to follow up on what you just said about the agency, yes, you run everything to the ground. That's what I used to tell junior officers in the field. They ask you, what do you think based on this information that they just found? The answer is, I don't know. Run it to the ground and find out. It'll break one way or the other. By the way, you write all of this up, and all of it is written up electronically, and it all survives for all time, and it is all searchable for all time. So in the big computer in the sky, all they got to do is punch a button, and you will find every report, every cable, everything that was written on this topic. So it's not a mystery. Let's just go find out what was done and what wasn't done. What I suspect is you will find that Brennan was up to his eyeballs in manufacturing a lot of this from the beginning, that he was never running down something that in good faith he was trying to document, that he was trying from the outset to stage what amounts to a coup. That's my opinion.
I think we have forgotten the one component too, that Hillary during her time as Secretary of State, and I would argue post her term as Secretary of State, was running her own intelligence gathering quasi CIA operation, because we cannot overlook what we came to learn on the first WikiLeaks cables break. She had to run around to all kinds of government leaders and apologize for what they were reading and what she was doing. Mm-hmm. And then we had Sidney Blumenthal and the whole Libya component. We had Cody Shearer. And then we had now the dead CIA guy who had a funky last name. His name escapes me. An overweight fellow, but he was in on that whole thing too. So it would stand to reason that she was including whatever channel of information that she could get out of the State Department, out of the CIA, out of FBI, because John Podesta had all of those channels working as well. I mean, so John Brennan had to be the hired mouthpiece over at CNN and MSNBC, and they had their own cloud database full of things that they were injecting in there. So do we subpoena John Brennan?
Well, maybe. I think what we can't do is we can't just close the books on whatever we're calling this thing, the Russia Oak, Russia Gate, whatever name we're giving it, that we can't just say, okay, Mueller didn't find anything, we're done. I mean, maybe on some level that's tempting because we're all sick and tired of this craziness. But I think we have to say, all right, wait a second. We've got an incredible number of very, very powerful people, plus press organizations, all kinds of other entities. And what did they just attempt to do? They attempted to nullify the results of a free and open election and effectively destroy a sitting president of the United States, whether you love him or hate him or a little bit of both on any given day. He's the man the people put in the office. They attempted to destroy him and tear him down. And it turns out there's apparently no substance to any of these allegations whatsoever. We can't just forget that. We can't just say, well, good try, guys, but you didn't win this time. Because, this is the kind of thing that really destroys republics. This is how nations get destroyed, right? I mean, all tired old analogies to the Roman Republic aside. No, this is really how they die. Because people stop playing by the rules. They stop following the law. It's win at any cost. It's do anything. And the next thing, I have said this before, probably, I think even to you. How far is it from what just happened to a scenario in which Barack Obama would have announced, I think there was Russian collusion. I refuse to. I'm nullifying the effect of the results of the election. I won't relinquish power to Donald Trump, and or I will not only not relinquish it to Donald Trump, but I will hand it to Hillary. Like, if you can do everything that was just done in the last 2 years, psychologically, couldn't you justify that and just say, no, he's a Russian agent, and until it's resolved, I won't leave office? And now we're like some West African nation where the president just says, I don't like the results of the election, so I'm staying. I mean, that's how close we are to basically losing the republic that we've had all this time, if we don't stop this right now.
The former CIA guy I was trying to think of was Tyler Drumheller.
Right.
So, won't it do the Democrats really, really want the unredacted version of the Mueller report? I mean, we could find out that we've got some things in there in reference to Sidney Blumenthal or John Brennan or Susan Rice or Samantha Power or Cody Scherer or, a whole host of these people, and other organizations. I mean, Hillary was famous for doing all kinds of things off the books and using State Department or government money to do so. And when it comes to black budgets, who had their hands on black budgets but John Brennan?
Well, look, I don't, this is what I think about the Democratic Party right now. I don't think that they are thinking. I think they're trapped into methodologies and modalities that they can't get out of. In other words, they've played the same cards over and over, and now they're just kind of trapped into this. I mean, this is what I mean by that. They're apparently getting ready to run, whoever gets nominated, they're getting ready to run against Donald Trump in 2020 with somebody so far to the left that they'll make Barack Obama look like a conservative. They're going to run on reparations. They're going to run on universal health care. They're going to run on destroying the fossil fuel industry, even as we become an exporter of energy. They're going to run on open borders. That's all they chant about all day, every day, and every top candidate they have out there has endorsed all of this crazy. So every poll in the world, in the country, tells you that 75 to 80% of the people in the United States have a negative view of socialism, and then there's about 10% or 12% that can't make up their minds, which is true on every issue. So you got about charitably 10 to 15% of the country that might actually follow a socialist agenda. This is a path to suicide. I mean, talking to people about Donald Trump and his behavior and his personality and his tweeting might resonate with a lot of people, but trying to convince them to pay reparations for slavery is not a path to electoral
bliss.
but they don't know how to stop, because the dynamic is everybody just has to take one more step to the left.
So it's a free-for-all.
So they're going to send, I don't know, Kamala Harris, maybe, to fight Donald Trump, and the issues will be socialism versus a booming economy. And in the end, a big chunk of Americans will say, I'm still not crazy about Donald Trump personally, but I'm sure as hell not voting for that madness. Just like a lot of people last time said, well, God knows it's not Hillary. And they're going to lose again. And there's no political strategist in the world that would tell you that any of this makes any sense, but they don't know how to get out of the death spiral. So they've all just sold. They've doubled down so much on the Russian investigation that they can't stop. They will insist that the file being opened and when the report being released, and when it's released, it won't help them one whit. And then they'll probably come up with some new allegation to make.
And so after the Mueller report was delivered to Bill Barr, and that Bill Barr wrote the memo, which I say is a courtesy memo,
right,
to Congress, and then they all started yelling and screaming. It ended up that John Brennan himself was called to a meeting, I think that was hosted by Jerry Nadler. So the other cohort that Brennan had was Phil Mudd. Mm-hmm. And he is just as radical as a former CIA. He's just as radical as John Brennan in his talking points on TV, right?
Pretty much. My dislike for John Brennan probably greatly exceeds any such emotion I have for Phil, who I know personally. But they're both, politically on the same side, and that's where they've gone. what particularly antagonizes me about Brennan is just his attempt to act as if he is not a political person, right? I mean, I retired and have run for office and have my political viewpoints, which are obvious from what I'm saying on this program, but I don't pretend otherwise. If I'm campaigning or speaking, it is clear what my position is and what it's based on. It's not as if I descended from Mount Olympus and you're supposed to treat me as this impartial authority, which is what Brennan keeps. Whenever he speaks, or he has spoken over the last 2 years, the subtext, he never says this directly, but it's clear what he wants you to believe. The subtext is, the president's a traitor, and that's not just my opinion. I know that because I've seen secret things, and I can't talk to you about those secret things or even acknowledge their existence, but just basically trust me on this. He's a spy. He's a traitor. And that's the way he speaks. This is not, hey, I'm John Brennan, and my opinion is that Donald Trump is a terrible president. No. I'm the keeper of the secrets, and I'm confiding in you these things, which back to where we started the conversation is why I feel like, okay, so having done that little dance for 2 years, you don't get to just say, oh, never mind, I guess my information was flawed. No. Wait a second. Exactly. And Clapper. No. Now it's time to see your cards. You told us all this time this was fact. So on what basis? And is it even, because increasingly, as we have touched on this conversation, there's this smell that not only was he biased from the beginning, but that he could well have been in on creating this whole hoax in the beginning, and that it was a hoax from the outset. And if that's the case, then we really are talking about something that was in effect an attempted coup.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be fun to watch. John Brennan as Lindsey Graham, chairman of the Senate Judiciary. He's going down this path, so keep the popcorn close. And Mr. Sam Faddis, thanks so much for your presentation on this one. The saga continues. It's almost like a mystery that just keeps getting printed every week in the newspaper. But thanks, Mr. Sam Faddis, and ladies and gentlemen, stay with us because there's more coming your way.
Hey, Donna, Cowboy Logic radio listeners love law enforcement.
That's right, Don. And Charity Magnets designs and produces beautiful, high-quality products for law enforcement supporters and enthusiasts.
They've got very impressive honor badge car magnets.
CharityMagnets.com.
They've got license plate honor badges.
CharityMagnets.com.
They've got cool keychains and license plate frames.
CharityMagnets.com. I'm on their website right now, and this is my favorite, the Honor Badge dog tag. Look at that little doggy with the dog tag. He's so cute.
Donna, we're trying to do an ad read, and you're playing around on their website, which happens to be CharityMagnets.com.
But he's so cute.
Donna.
Okay. Hey, this is huge, too. For each sale, a donation will be made to Cops for Kids with Cancer. Cops for Kids with Cancer has given more than $2.5 million in donations. Yes.
Become a Blue Honor Foundation member today. Like Donna is doing right now, go to CharityMagnets.com.
But he's so cute. All right, use the promo code MOJO for $5 off any purchase. I know you all love and support our brave law enforcement professionals and their families. Show your support today by going to CharityMagnets.com and check out that little puppy. He's so cute. Hey, Don, can we go to the pound, get another rescue dog, please? Pretty
No,
please?
Donna, no. 5 rescue dogs are enough, but I'm going to CharityMagnets.com, and I'm making some purchases right now.
Become a Blue Honor Foundation member today. Enter MOJO at checkout and get $5 off. CharityMagnets.com.
Let's face it, liberals are offended by everything.
Right on.
And they have zero sense of humor.
Right on.
Huh?
Right on. It's the party game that pokes fun at political correctness and liberalism run amok.
But making fun of them is hilarious for the rest of us.
So play right on and mock the progressive left and their fake news media counterparts in a variety of categories, such as race hustle, the wussification of America, earth snobs, Islam abomination, Hollywood hypocrites, and campus coddling. Feminism follies and rainbow games, and don't forget, millennial entitlement and many others.
Right On, created by conservatives for conservatives.
Because mocking the left feels so right on.
Give the gift of all year long by going to RightOnGame.com.
That's RightOnGame.com. Use promo code MOJO50 for a 10% discount. That's RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off.
And while you're there, check out the new drinking game option.
Warning, microaggressions contained in this box. Millennials and snowflakes will be offended by its contents. Retreating to safe spaces are highly recommended.
RightOnGame.com, promo code MOJO50 for 10% off. RightOnGame.com.
You can't handle the truth.
The Denise Simon Experience. The Truth Matrix. Vetting, exposing, drilling down to the truth.
Rolling Thunder, this is Hitman. Seat over. Hitman, this is Rolling Thunder. Seat out.
The Denise Simon Experience. Exposing politics, lies, demagoguery, spin, fraud.
Grid to suppress. Mike Charlie 435-9er21. Grid to mark. Mike Charlie 4739er89er out.
Promoting individual situational awareness. Question, probe, notice, ask why.
Mark smoke on the deck. 2 rounds HEPT. Gas TOT 53.
And now, the Denise Simon Experience.
And thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging with us on the Denise Simon Experience. Michael Ingmire, previous guest on this show, tapped me on the shoulder because we are getting some confirmation of a major scandal that happened during the Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama reign of terror in government, and that dealt with Benghazi. And the Dave Janda show, radio show, I think out of Michigan.
Yeah, Operation Freedom, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Actually interviewed Charles Woods and yet another former military type that was assigned to a position in AFRICOM at the time. And out of fear, he had not come forward with some facts. And now, since he's no longer, now that he's, I guess, former military, he has decided to come forward with some confirmations. So let's kind of cover that, if we can, a little bit, Michael. And that is that there's some certainly confirmations or additional details that really dealt with surveillance at the time, as well as the stand-down order, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And also just the fact that there were assets available that, and this particular gentleman, who goes by the first name of Travis, was saying that he was, in essence, the person monitoring the drones that were filming the attack as it was happening.
Right.
And, the point that he made, which was, an obvious point, but not an obvious point, to at least to the folks that don't know about Benghazi, is that assets were available. They could have reprogrammed those drones to be armed drones, and our people would have had more of a chance. And my nephew, because in essence, they really could have saved Ambassador Stevens and my nephew Sean.
Well, that's exactly right. And as I recall, there were 2 drones stationed in Libya. And in order to accept the drones to be stationed in Libya, because we had, drone garages, if you will, that were designated, and they were dynamic in location. The conditions were that they had to be unarmed. They could only be surveillance drones.
Right.
But there were munitions that were available, under extremist circumstances. But in this particular case, those drones, when they were launched at the time of the attack, were unarmed with munitions, correct?
Exactly. And they were trying to basically either land these drones, reprogram them, whatever they had to do to make them fully weapons operational. And they were told on their end to stand down.
And interestingly enough, we haven't really gotten down to the facts on who issued the stand down order, except that we know that it was born, at least at the State Department level, the higher ups,
Sure.
At the State Department level. And we have to remember too that the military is subservient. So whatever the higher ups tell the military to do or not to do, they must comply, correct?
Right, hence the term commander in chief, But we did not have a commander, and he wasn't acting very chief-like, shall we say. Too busy playing cards, getting ready for a Vegas fundraiser.
Yeah, Vegas or something, right?
Yeah.
I've got a handful of people that are active military, and they're placed in various locations around the world. And I do know that regardless of where they are, they could be at Fort Bragg, they could be at 29 Palms, they could be anywhere. And every single day there is a briefing. There is a military briefing every single day at every single base. And what is particularly interesting to me is going into 9/11, the military is always gets these creepy crawlies on their skin because anniversaries mean a lot to militant Islamists.
Right.
And I would argue that in some military briefings that the military themselves were on guard, if you will, leading up to and including any anniversary of 9/11, correct?
Yeah, you would think they would be, But the problem is, and this is the thing that's still maddening, is the fact that we did have Marines over in Benghazi up until about August of 2012. And it's insurmountable. I mean, it's so purposeful as far as its actual enactment of evil that, it just continues to be maddening. I mean, I haven't stopped being angry at these folks. Going back to the interview with Travis and Charles Woods is a remarkable person to me.
Indeed.
Because he basically says he's forgiven those that are guilty. I consider myself a Christian, but I'm not that good of a Christian
I'm not either.
yet. I'm just not.
I want to be him when I grow up.
Yeah, when I grow up, maybe in about 20, 25 years, I'll be like Charles. But
Right.
At this point, I'm not. I'm still very angry. I still feel that there's not been any real accountability except for the fact that we've convicted the chief of Ansar al-Sharia, meaning Abu Khatala, last year.
Yippee skippy.
Yippee yippee. We sentenced him to 22 years in prison. So really, the people in government, they've been promoted. Most of the people that actually were involved in this thing, the Charlene Lambs, the Ben Rhodes, the people, the Susan Rices, the folks that really put forth the mythology of the video and things along those lines. Those people have been promoted. They're doing better. They got a better pay grade. Unfortunately, my nephew's not among them.
Let me go down two paths that in all of these years since the attack on Benghazi that nobody has brought up, and it's been a burning hole in my stomach ever since. And one is, where Bob, as we know him from the movie 13 Hours, was essentially the station chief, if you will, in Benghazi. Right. Where I don't even know how to ask the question, because but look, if he was doing the job that he needed to be doing, then they would have been ringing the alarms leading up to 9/11. It was their job. And if you go back very, very carefully and watch the movie again, when they are actually in what was known to be the CIA post there's a bulletin board there. And on that bulletin board are some interesting memos. And nobody has picked that up. It validated everything that I knew leading up to the movie being produced. I think I even wrote about it, but I mean, that was 3 computers ago.
Yeah, I remember that scene quite well, because they're like almost in their sort of rec room, and they're relaxing. And one of the
and they're talking about stingers.
Right, and they're talking about stingers and the whole bit.
Okay,
they're talking about what it takes to really, protect the facility.
Well, I had just finished reading a book at the time that this attack happened. And what's particularly interesting is I actually found it on a New York senator's, I'm trying to remember her name at this point, but I found it on her website. And I think I captured it in one of the blog posts I did some time ago.
Right.
But they gave Hillary Clinton at the time $50 million to go track down and buy back the Stinger missiles that we had sold to Libya, which was really the gist of part and parcel of this operation that was happening in Benghazi, leading up to Benghazi.
Right, because they wanted to buy these weapons back, and they wanted to transfer these weapons to that wonderful little group called ISIS over in Syria. They didn't know them as ISIS at that point. They didn't have a marketing plan together. But nonetheless, that's what it ended up being. It was a weapons running operation, and I thought it was like patently ridiculous. The more I read about it and study it and research and all that, that they even thought that these insurgent rebels in Libya were going to turn over their weapons for money. They liked they liked those American weapons, They
and that's what we did in Afghanistan.
Right.
We had sold a bunch of Stinger missiles, shoulder-fired missiles, and we bought as many back as we could. I mean, we were buying them back for much more than we sold them for or gave them to them. And that was part and parcel what was happening here. But the other piece is we have never seen any kind of summary or after action report by anybody that was at the CIA compound at the time, have we?
No, none at all. None at all, And the only real report out there about what happened to me still is the Citizens Commission report on Benghazi, which
correct.
Was titled, Benghazi, a dereliction of duty. And that's exactly what everything that was entailed, whatever reasoning they used, where they were trying to hide their weapons running, where they were trying to hide their basic incompetence, or whether they were really trying to clear what they would consider people to be collateral damage, and which is the best way to hide things. If there's no one left alive, then there's really nothing to report, right? And I think that's really what Barack and Hillary's intentions were, that they really wanted for there to be no survivors, for them to basically then have carte blanche to go and, base themselves in Libya, attack Syria, in all essence. They figured if they wiped everybody out, then it would be definitely an open door to warfare.
Another person that has escaped all conversations, but hasn't escaped my Post-it notes and my notes and so forth, is Ambassador Jean Kretz.
Right.
Jean Kretz speaks several languages, including Urdu, Arabic, 2 or 3 others. Gene Kretz was the ambassador to Libya prior to Ambassador Stevens.
Yeah, nobody, that's interesting. Nobody has talked to her. Nobody has really basically asked her opinion even on what happened. That's interesting, but that's true.
And
I've never seen anything.
He was removed from that post, ambassador to Libya,
right
at the end or the fallout, post the fallout of the first WikiLeaks cables dump, because he had written some pretty snarky cables back to headquarters about Gaddafi. And that obviously made Gaddafi and his whole regime pretty angry. So they yanked him out for his own safety. Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting.
But one of the cables, and I'm quoting, the shipment was held up because the Libyan regime was fed up with the slow progress of U.S.-Libya relations. The highly enriched uranium eventually left Tripoli on December the 21st, 2009.
Wow.
So, yes. So, there was a time right after that first WikiLeaks cables dump. I spent probably all my Friday and Saturday nights when everybody else was partying going through WikiLeaks cables.
Yeah.
But listen, this cat, he knew exactly what Libya was made of. He knew exactly all things Gaddafi. He knew exactly about all of the inner workings of the protections that Gaddafi was giving, the whole thing. And not one person has interviewed this cat. Now,
Nope.
Isn't that just a little on the terrifying side?
Oh, it is. It's just, again, the perpetuation of the deep state. The deep state doesn't like revelations. The deep state does not like truth, and the deep state does not like to be confronted about their aberrant behavior.
Beyond those cables, when Ambassador Stevens took over Libya, that there would have been a briefing, not only stateside, but in Libya for what he was really getting himself into.
Right.
And not only was he getting himself into, what his job was as ambassador going forward. And because of the shaky conditions that had been going on for quite some time, and because he was always denied additional securities, he tasked his security team, as small as that was, the contractors and even, I would say, the CIA compound, we better know where assets are at all times, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Stevens was not a fool, He may have done foolish things. He may have participated in foolish activities. But at heart, he really wasn't a fool. He knew what, danger it was. I mean, my God, he contacted Hillary Clinton's office over 600 times saying we need additional security.
Mm-hmm. Furthermore,
he just didn't answer that 3 a.m. phone call, right?
Yeah. And furthermore, I would argue that nobody has really, even from, I guess, AFRICOM's side that I have seen, I'll have to go to a couple other websites, done a true after-action report on protecting compounds, whether they're a diplomatic post. I mean, because Libya had only one embassy, and that was in Tripoli. The 2 compounds in Benghazi, one was a diplomatic post that was a fairly new home that was being rented from a private citizen, and the other was the CIA compound, which itself was temporary because of the shoulder-fired missiles, correct?
Exactly, because they had their orders, and they were trying to fulfill the orders. They were trying to basically de-weaponize these insurgent Al-Qaeda rebels.
Well, there's still much more to be chatted about when it comes to all things Benghazi. I argue, and I think you and I talked about this the last time you were on the show, is that especially with the whole Biden thing that's going on, I think it's time that the Trump administration start declassifying documents, and I call it the drip method. Just declassify a document once a month leading up until November of 2020. Let's say.
Yeah, they could start at a reasonable ratio. They could start in like 2010 and go into things like PSD-11, which lays out the plan of the Obama administration to change quasi-secular leaders like Gaddafi over into members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Because, they had this, whether he wanted to give his friends work or whether he wanted to basically have a uniform face to the Islamic face of North Africa, then I don't know. But I really think that's the thing that I've always I've petitioned the Trump administration on is let's declassify the emails. Let's declassify the paperwork that was leading up to it.
Well said, Mr. Michael Ingmire. I'm very happy that you brought the attention to the interview of the Dave Janda show, Operation, what was it, Operation Freedom?
Operation Freedom, yeah. Also, on another side note, I don't think this is related. I think we're dealing with a different person, but General Paul Vallely has said that he has information about another whistleblower. And he's being very tight-lipped about it, as Paul can be.
Yeah, I know.
I'm very interested. I think that, we're at a point now where a lot of folks have left service that were there at that time, and they're starting to speak up and speak out because, like me and like a lot of folks, they're haunted by this. We're obviously haunted from a very personal point of view. But nonetheless, it's a blight on the face and history of America, Benghazi is. And the problem is that we're not any safe. Our people, our foreign service personnel, are not any safer than they were in 2012.
I agree with that.
That's terrifying.
Michael Ingmire, thanks for coming on the Denise Simon Experience, and please give a warm hug to Pat. And ladies and gentlemen, there's more coming your way, so stay with us.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio, and I carry my Sig Sauer 9mm every day. It's like a MasterCard. I never leave home without it.
And I'm glad you do, given that you work in Atlanta every day, talking about a rough place to work.
Well, Donna, I would say that most of our beloved Cowboy Logic Radio listeners not only own, but carry their weapons too. It's just the thing to do nowadays.
So do I, Don. And we need to share with our listeners a fantastic weapons company, Tar River Arms. Oh, and I should mention, they were founded by United States Marine, enough said, right? Badass-o-matic.
TarRiverArms.com. That's TAR Riverarms.com.
Tar River Arms, America's first virtual gun store, makes it easier and more comfortable than ever to purchase your firearm online. And through 3D interactive experiences, you can even view and inspect that gun you're purchasing.
They even have weekly specials that eliminate shipping and broker fees, Donna. Great guns, great prices, and great service. And remember, Tar River Arms is veteran-owned and operated.
Don, would you expect anything less from a Marine?
No, ma'am.
At TarRiverArms.com, you can search by caliber, manufacturer, and firearm types. Revolvers, semi-automatic pistols, including your SIG, Don, short-barrel rifles, long rifles, shotguns, and NFA silencers. They even have very hard-to-find products such as the H&K MP5. Totally badass.
Tar River Arms have some of the coolest high-end tactical weapons made, all at great prices.
TarRiverArms.com, U.S. Marine owned and operated.
Hoorah!
Hey, gang, did you know that the big cellular companies fund liberal causes and candidates, not Patriot Mobile?
You're correct, Donna. Did you know that the big mobile companies have spent over $100 million to elect liberal candidates? They also fund liberal causes, agendas, and organizations such as Planned Parenthood, not Patriot Mobile.
Here's how it works. You, our beloved Cowboy Logic Radio listeners, pay your cell phone bill every month. Then Big Mobile takes your money and gives millions to liberal candidates who authorize subsidies to provide free cell service, Obama phones, to do-nothings who vote for more liberals so they can keep getting more free stuff that you pay for. Not Patriot Mobile.
So here's how you fight back. Switch to Patriot Mobile with unlimited plans starting as low as $20 a month and stop funding the big cellular companies.
Feel good about funding the right agendas. Every dollar you spend makes a statement. What message are you sending?
And it's easy to switch. You can even keep your same number, and they've got great nationwide coverage that includes Double D Ranch.
Visit them online at patriotmobile.com or call them at 1-800-A-PATRIOT.
And for any of the guilt-ridden liberals, that's 1-800-272-8746.
Created by conservatives for conservatives. Their name says it all. Patriot Mobile. Do it now. patriotmobile.com or 1-800-A-PATRIOT.
Ladies and gentlemen, what message are you sending?
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging with us on the Denise Simon Experience. When we talk about immigration, what do? I run over to Washington, D.C., and I start yanking on the shirt sleeves of the experts over there at FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. And Matt O'Brien always pulls up the short straw, so he's been kind enough to join us on the Denise Simon Experience again and again and again. And the reason that he's so wonderful is because he's been looking at this immigration thing for decades, and he's in charge of their research activities at FAIR. And so thank you, Mr. Matt O'Brien, for being with us on the Denise Simon Experience.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Okay. We got three countries that are in a tailspin. Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, at a minimum, that are causing us real headaches. I say for right now, we just kind of write off El Salvador. I'm not even sure that's salvageable. But I believe Honduras and Guatemala may be. Now, I started poking around and looking at Honduras because we've had previous relationships with Honduras in a lot of respects. And I would say they spent about 1.5% of their GDP on military. So, okay. President Hernandez of Honduras, I'm looking at his model of the Constitution and his role as president. It's very similar to, what ours is here in the United States. But I would say, where is his military in trying to control stuff in his country? Because he's having a labor drain.
Well, I think all of the countries in that area, there's a lot of conflicting information. So first of all, the common narrative that's being flogged by the mainstream media is that these people are all fleeing gang violence and increases in gang violence being driven by deportees from the United States. Well, that's not actually true. If you look at the homicide rates for those countries, most of which are the size of large American cities, you find that the homicide rates are actually lower than they are in some of the United States cities like St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole thing about how this is being driven is a myth. And what I think is going on is that a lot of these countries have the convenient option of anytime they have any kind of political opposition, they can export it to the United States, rely on the United States to give people asylum, or at the very least to take them in and leave them in some indefinite status, and then all those people wind up sending remittance payments back to these governments, or at least back to their families, who then spend them in the local economy, and the governments collect taxes off of it. So it's difficult to say, where is his military, where is his police. I have met some of the officers with the immigration services in those areas, and all of the immigration enforcement people say that they're getting migration from other places, whether it be in the Caribbean or the Middle East, that they're not happy about. So it's difficult to say. And I think a lot of the destabilization in these countries is less a function of local politics than it is the Ninth Circuit sending a clear message.
Yes.
Listen, if you come to the United States, you're going to get in, and we're going to issue some kind of national injunction out of a district court that's located in the Ninth Circuit somewhere, and you'll be able to come in. And so if you look at the way the economies in these places work, it's often to the advantage of a family member or family members to come to the United States. And even if they wind up working under the table somewhere as an illegal alien, or they wind up in some nebulous temporary protected status or something of the sort working at a McDonald's, that U.S. money that they're earning doesn't seem like much to us. But when you translate it into the local currency after you send it back, it winds up being a fortune for their family. So a lot of this is economic, and it's sort of a self-perpetuating cycle. The more people we take in, the more want to come.
And grab any kid that you happen to see and hold their hand and claim it's yours, and then recycle that kid, right?
Well, yes. I mean, it's led to the bizarre phenomenon of rent-a-kids and child recycling.
Rent-a-kids.
Well, and it's also led, I don't know if you saw a couple of weeks ago, the Border Patrol released a video of smugglers dropping a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, I believe it was, over one of the walls on the border with Mexico to distract Border Patrol agents who went in to make sure the kids were okay and render medical attention. And then while they were doing that, they had a group of 10, 12, 15 illegal aliens go running in the opposite direction into the United States.
Yeah, I did. Okay, so now let me pose this question. We have Elliot Abrams, who is the lead envoy, consulting with the State Department and the White House on the matter of Venezuela. I would argue that Trump is speaking about tapping somebody on the shoulder to be an immigration czar, and that's fine. But I would say he needs, since we don't really have an ambassador to these countries, we need an envoy to these countries of particular interest: Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Or am I just dreaming?
No, I don't think you're dreaming. I think an envoy charged with dealing specifically with immigration might be a wise idea. I think that the State Department still has missions active in a lot of those countries there, and the countries are relatively small. So even if they don't have a mission in a particular country, there's usually an interest section at our embassy in one of the nearby countries, which, it's great to have the State Department there because the United States has a lot of, and people are probably familiar with the term from the famous article by Joseph Nye, but soft power. There's things that we can do that don't involve border walls and application of force that can help correct these situations. And the State Department are certainly the experts in doing that kind of diplomacy and in making foreign aid work and in finding out what countries need to help stabilize their situation. I think what we're not exploiting, and this is where an envoy would come in handy, we're not doing the public diplomacy information warfare angle of this.
Yes.
We are clearly sending a message in these countries that, look, we understand your plight, we want to be helpful, but you cannot come rushing the U.S. border. We're not going to let you in.
Well, there was a time when CIA would print up these pamphlets and drop them from airplanes into contested battlefields. Israel is a master at it. In fact, they call people on the phone and then knock on the roof before they start dropping some little rockets on Hamas. And so we don't have to go to school we can go to school on these people because those are lessons already learned and they're effective. So, regardless of what might be on the State Department's website for the diplomatic wing for these three countries in question. I mean, we got other things that we can do. So why aren't we dropping some pamphlets and going, stay there? Because you ain't getting in.
Well, you run into a problem where there are parties and interests in the United States that don't want that to happen. The other thing is we have gotten out of that kind of approach to things since the close of the Cold War. We no longer have the U.S. Information Agency, and the fact is that the differing branches of the United States government are not on the same page with this. The White House has a clear idea of what it wants to do, but it doesn't have a clear idea of how it's going to go about doing it. Congress doesn't know what the heck it's doing, and the courts, depending upon which region of the country you're in, are all over the map on all of this. And the Supreme Court is a very slow-moving, on purpose entity that takes these things up when they're ripe for consideration and is not in a hurry to issue decisions on these things. And I don't think we want to change it so that it does work too quickly. That inevitably leads to bad law. But what you have is, with this particular issue, you've got a lot of puppies chasing their tail around and not actually accomplishing anything. And that's really what's been driving the problem for a long time.
Okay, so we have we had some immigration reform bill that went, well, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago now, out of the Senate. It passed the Senate, fell on the floor in the House. And as I mentioned, that Trump wants to have what is known as an immigration czar. I think that's cool. We got two names, possibly 3 on the short list. One is Tom Homan, former, I think he was ICE director. Then we have Chris Kobach and we have Ken Cuccinelli. Of the 3, I would choose personally Ken Cuccinelli, but that's just me. Mostly because he has a legislative resume. And somewhere, whoever gets the assignment, a czar does not have to have a Senate confirmation. Let me kind of clear that up, correct?
That depends. There are some that are Senate approved and some that aren't. So the problem with the czars is they're not really appointed to any, based upon any particular authority that's set forth in statute. Most of the time they're appointed based on the authority inherent in the office of the president. Now, there are a few of them who aren't. And that's one of the problems with czar programs. If you're not actually operating on statutory authority, it can often make it difficult for you to do the job. Now, there was talk about the need for an intelligence czar, and they actually formed the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, which was a statutorily created office. It was created after the September 11th attacks. When I was at ICE and USCIS, I had interactions with ODNI, as they call it, because we're all nuts about acronyms here in D.C. Mm-hmm. And it really does improve information sharing. I'm not sure how effective it was at some of the other things that it was attempting to do, but it did, by leaps and bounds, improve the information sharing among the various agencies in the intelligence community. So I agree with you. I think an immigration czar can be a great thing if it's done correctly. The one place where I disagree with you slightly is I don't think the immigration czar, with the tensions in Congress the way they are now, is going to really be able to do much in the legislative realm.
Understood. But at least he knows where the skeletons are.
Well, that's true. And I mean, I will say, I live in Virginia, so I'm familiar with Cuccinelli. I think he was fantastic. I don't know why the Republicans didn't back him more solidly for governor of Virginia. I know Tom Homan and Chris Kobach used to work for FAIR, actually for the Immigration Reform Law Institute at one point in time. So you're talking about 3 people with fantastic background. I think for this particular position, though, they need somebody who's familiar. They need to know where the bodies are buried, the skeletons are buried, or I should say the skeletons are hidden, with regard to how the immigration system works. Because we have an epic problem with immigration. We have a myth that our immigration laws are antiquated and outdated. We need to change them, and we need to do all these things in order to be able to correct the situation. But the fact is, we're not applying the immigration laws, most of them, the way they were written by Congress. We've had successive administrations, both Democrat and Republican, selectively ignore portions of the law in order to appeal to perceived political constituencies. And it's that pandering that has thrown the whole system off kilter. So I think where an immigration czar could be effective would be having somebody who understands how the system works and is in a position to say to the president, Mr. President, you have authority to do this. You don't need anything else, so let's just do it and put it into place. Then you have to deal with the inevitable lawsuits in the Ninth Circuit by the ACLU and the American Immigration Lawyers Association. But Trump's been winning on those. I mean, if you look at the decision in Trump v. Hawaii, there was all this hair pulling and garment rending over the so-called travel ban. And people saying all over the media that this was absurd. This had never been done before by a president. It wasn't constitutionally supportable. Of course, it had been done, and that case was a slam dunk in the Supreme Court for the Trump administration. I mean, if you read the opinion, the Supreme Court seems to be very gently saying to the Ninth Circuit, "Hey, stupid, you guys got this wrong." And that's a problem. But if you have somebody who just pushes this operational agenda using the authorities that exist, you send a clear message that we're not going to put up with this. Eventually, you start deporting enough of the immigration violators and illegal aliens that they get fed up and decide to go home because they have more to lose by staying here. And the lawsuits don't matter as much in the end. But until you have someone who's willing to take a multi-point approach to this and pursue all the prongs at once, then it's never going to work.
Well, I have my magic sword, and I have taken it out and touched you on both shoulders and made O'Brien czar of immigration. Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure why my name wasn't on the list in the first place.
I was going to ask you that at the top of the show, but yeah. Okay, so Czar O'Brien, what would be the first thing that you would necessarily tackle on immigration as an immigration czar?
Well, I think the first thing I would do is go about trying to correct the public misperceptions that are being deliberately sown by the mainstream media. I mean, you had this Nimrod in New York who interfered with an ICE arrest, and then went on the media saying that he had done this great thing, scoring a victory for civil rights, when he was completely wrong on all the legal points. And of course, the media are now using this to say that ICE needs a judicial warrant in order to arrest an illegal alien, and that they can't stop U.S. citizens if they're the ones driving the illegal aliens. That's all nonsense. ICE has been arresting illegal aliens for at least 80 years. Back when it was the INS, back when it was first formed, and even before that, when it was part of the Customs Service and the Bureau of Labor. Was doing all of these things because there's a statutory framework in place that allows ICE to do these things, and it has never been declared unconstitutional. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The Supreme Court has repeatedly said that it has the authority to do these things. So you have all these things that are being put out there, that ICE needs judicial warrants, that you can only arrest an illegal alien who's committed a crime, not just because they're here illegally, that the president doesn't have authority to close the border or, to do any kind of an immigration ban. And I think those perceptions need to be corrected, first of all, because if you sow that information with the voters who care about this issue, it's going to change the way people vote if there is a critical election on it, because they have enough information to make a wise choice about the candidate who's going to run things the way they want to be run. The other thing that it does, I speak to a lot of groups on immigration issues, and I was down in Charlottesville, Virginia, where the University of Virginia is, speaking to a group down there. And I had a lady come up to me afterwards and explain that, the real problem here is that everybody just has differing views, and she believes differently than I do that these people should not be deported or arrested or anything of this sort. And I said, well, the one difference between your belief and mine is that my belief is actually memorialized in statute, and it's the law of the land. And a lot of people don't seem to get that. We seem to have lost that respect for the lawmaking process, and people seem to think that if they're upset about something, we can throw out the whole constitutional order and just do it the way they think is appropriate, not realizing that if we start doing things that way, we're going to lose control. And so until you actually address those informational types of problems, you can't do anything, because you're not going to be able to have enough public support. So if that were, if it were O'Brien Czar's way to do things, the first thing I would do is I would start an information campaign, and I would try and explain both to the federal government, to the state courts, and to the public how this is all supposed to work. And then the next thing I would do is I would start having a team of skilled lawyers with some background in immigration take a look at all of these things and say, okay, what does the statute really give me authority to do?
The last time you were with us on the Denise Simon Experience, I was whining almost to tears because I felt like that we needed to have, we can't do it in the House, but we can have a Senate hearing on stuff dealing with immigration, the cost and the wide consequences of what immigration and illegal immigration is really costing us when it comes to education, when it comes to entitlements, when it comes to medical, all these other kinds of things. Okay, well, we don't have a hearing in the Senate. So on your information campaign, Czar O'Brien, how about doing what you just described and taking, the germane text of law and judicial decisions and doing a whole czar documentary in a series, short of being on HBO, not that they would host it anyway, but trot on over to YouTube, and that is if Google will let it stay there, and do a teaching session to not only to media, but to legislators and politicians and little people like us.
Well, that's exactly what FAIR tries to do, and we have a huge presence both on Facebook and YouTube. So any of your listeners who are interested can either go to our website, which is www.fairus.org, or to either Facebook or YouTube and just use the search function to find FAIR. And we have a pretty good reach. We have a pretty good record of changing people's opinions on this and getting information out. The trouble is, FAIR is not the government. And you have an administration who has been the best that we've seen since the Eisenhower administration on taking immigration seriously and connecting the dots and acknowledging that it's a national security problem, that has public health implications, that has public safety implications. However, it's not the best administration in terms of laying out its plan and explaining to the public why it can do things. So Trump said, I'm doing a travel ban. And immediately the mainstream media, which is almost indistinguishable from the political left at this point, went off saying, no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't. And the fact is, all of my friends who are not into this, who haven't become complete converts to Fox, who occasionally watch some of these other channels, were calling me and they were saying, hey, why is the president doing this? Why is he doing this if he can't do it? And I explained to them why he could do it. And they went, oh, well, why isn't the news telling us that? And so
I get those questions all the time too.
I think one of the biggest problems that the Trump administration has, and I'm a fan of the Trump administration. I mean, I think that they have been phenomenal on issues like national security and trade, but in particular, they've really acknowledged what the issues are with immigration. But when you look at things like the rollout of the so-called travel ban,
it's flawed.
It wasn't handled very well because a lot of people within the government claimed that they didn't even know that it was coming.
Right.
And I think this is because you have a group of people whose primary experience is in private sector business, where a lot of times in profit-making ventures in the business world, you either don't want to let something out of the bag before you roll it out, or you just don't have to, and because you have to move on business opportunities, you don't. But governing is very different than the process of running a for-profit business. And I think as a result of that, you have some people who kind of think they're making Fortune 500 decisions rather than decisions in a republic where the people are the government.
Yeah, there are some flawed. It's almost as though a lot of the Trump administration puts these things out as a trial balloon and then just sees where it goes, and then they have to kind of clean up the mess instead of having a full blown launch and it's timed and it's synchronized and rehearsed and talking points are measured and all those other kinds of things. So, I mean, they didn't even really fight back when it was labeled the travel ban, certainly that I saw. Well, so we're in favor of an immigration czar. Is there I think Ken Cuccinelli was actually at the White House on Monday. Should it be a czar or should it be a czar leading an envoy?
I have a couple of different thoughts on this. I mean, first of all, I think that while Kirstjen Nielsen wasn't necessarily a bad pick for Secretary of Homeland Security really right now at this point in time is about immigration. And her background, as I understand it, is more in kind of cyber defense. So I don't think she was an ideal pick. And I think if you had someone like Tom Homan or Chris Kobach in that position, you might not need an immigration czar.
Oh, I see.
I think you probably would still need an envoy because the diplomatic aspect of that is something that, isn't done by the stateside domestic agencies. But I think we're at a point where, like I said, if it's done right, I think a czar could be very useful. But I agree with you that the czar has to have some way of transmitting the message abroad, and that would come through a special envoy. And, frankly, sometimes I think the president doesn't understand that the people in the executive branch work for him. And, of course, and if you think about it, it's been part of the media's narrative that these are all neutral agencies. I mean, these discussions about the Justice Department's supposed to be a neutral agency that acts like a court. It's not. It's an executive branch agency. It's responsible for prosecuting, and it works for the president.
Well, Mr. Matt O'Brien, thank you for explaining all of this. Ladies and gentlemen, please trot on over to fair.us. Is that right? Or .org?
Fairus.org.
Fairus.org. Oh, got it sort of right. Thank you, Mr. Czar, Matt O'Brien. And ladies and gentlemen, we so appreciate you being with us, and we'll see you again very soon.
Hey, Donna, Cowboy Logic Radio listeners love law enforcement.
That's right, Don. And Charity Magnets designs and produces beautiful, high-quality products for law enforcement supporters and enthusiasts.
They've got very impressive honor badge car magnets.
CharityMagnets.com.
They've got license plate honor badges.
CharityMagnets.com.
They've got cool keychains and license plate frames.
CharityMagnets.com. I'm on their website right now, and this is my favorite, the Honor Badge dog tag. Look at that little doggy with the dog tag. He's so cute.
Donna, we're trying to do an ad read, and you're playing around on their website, which happens to be CharityMagnets.com.
But he's so cute.
Donna.
Okay. Hey, this is huge, too. For each sale, a donation will be made to Cops for Kids with Cancer. Cops for Kids with Cancer has given more than $2.5 million in donations. Yes.
Become a Blue Honor Foundation member today. Like Donna is doing right now, go to CharityMagnets.com.
But he's so cute. All right, use the promo code MOJO for $5 off any purchase. I know you all love and support our brave law enforcement professionals and their families. Show your support today by going to CharityMagnets.com and check out that little puppy. He's so cute. Hey, Don, can we go to the pound, get another rescue dog, please? Pretty
No,
please?
Donna, no. 5 rescue dogs are enough, but I'm going to CharityMagnets.com, and I'm making some purchases right now.
Become a Blue Honor Foundation member today. Enter MOJO at checkout and get $5 off. CharityMagnets.com.